All right, welcome back everybody. My name's Chris Fisher. What I got here is my 1964 Triumph TR4. Doing a tear down of it. If everything goes according to plan, I'll get the motor out today. Thanks for watching. I have been away for a couple weeks. I had some business travel and then some personal travel. But while I was gone, I did get my copy of my British Motor Heritage Certificate. And sure enough, all the numbers that are on the car here are what came off of the factory rolls. So the body number matches, the engine number matches, the chassis number, excuse me, the commission number matches, all that stuff. So I assume that this is a completely original car. A couple things I did find out, it was red. I kind of knew that. Black leather interior, kind of knew that. It did come with a wood dash, and that's something that I wasn't going to go back to. I was going to go to a white dash, but since it's original, I'm probably going to go with the wood dash now. Also talked about getting white wall tires. Didn't specifically mention whether or not it had wires, but I kind of assumed that it did since everything else is here with the car. But that was a good shot in the arm. Just thought I'd want to share that with you, and pretty excited about it. And as you can see here, I did get floors. So these came from the Roadster factory, TRF. They are British Heritage Original, so that's good. So one of the biggest things that I do want to protect is this grille here. It's aluminum, anodized aluminum, and it's in pretty good shape. There's a couple problems over here where the car got smacked. So I want to get that off of here and get that kind of put away so it doesn't get damaged, get the lights off, get the headlights off. Most of the motor stuff has already been taken apart. The mounts are disconnected. Whoever had this car before was about 95% of the way there, so I'll have to continue on. But we're going to get this grill off and get this thing situated. So first up, we've got several bolts across the top here, 7/16 guys here, and these are the supports that kind of provide the support for this front dash panel. And it looks like little 1/4" guys here, I think. Yep, 1/4" there. So we'll get those guys out of here. Should have been a lock washer under this one, but there wasn't, so that's evidence of prior disassembly. All right, so the other thing we'll take off is we'll take off all the little lights and get them off, and I think they're kind of pinched on. They pinch the grill on. And the plastic lenses here are in okay shape, not great. The aftermarket ones, at least in my experience, you can just barely see here. You got Lucas, and then you got the lens number. The aftermarket ones don't have this stuff on it because I assume it's copyrighted. So that's something to try to hold on to protect the originality. All right, so anyway, we'll get the lights off. I think there's a couple small screws from the inside too, and I'll come back when there's a little bit more action for you. So to get the grill off on this side, you got 4 screws along the bottom. They're pretty easy to get at. And then for the lamps, you got the 3 screws of the parking lamp here. One of these screws actually screws into the body. The other 2 screws are really tricky in here, and I'll zoom in and show you where they are in this little guy here. All right, so behind here, there's a little piece of plastic. I've already taken that off, a plastic ring. And I'm not quite sure kind of what the point of that is, but it's really, get the shot here, sorry, real thin. Little piece of plastic, and then behind that you've got this rubber, which obviously this one's all shot. And then behind those reveals little flathead screws. You got one down here and one up here. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull those out, and then that should release the corners of the grill along with the lamp, yep, from the body. So you can see now that that's completely loose down here. We'll go around, we'll do the other side. These lamps will need to come out in some way, shape, or form. I got junction plugs at some point, so I'll be able to get these dewired and get them off the loom, and then pull the grill out. So as those of you that know what you're doing with these cars probably have been screaming at me, this is like a big puzzle piece. So you've got this grill here, you've got stabilizers that come in, this pole here that comes into the overrider, that goes through the grill, so that's going to need to come off. So the whole front bumper will come off. So I'll pull those, the two bars on either side, and then it looks like just two big bolts. You can just barely, it's all in the shadow, but there's a bolt down there. Trust me, that comes up through these arms here. Try to get them off, and that should relieve the bumper, and then I can get the bumper off, and then I'll have to essentially disassemble the entire, this, you can see that the original harness is this blue tape here that comes in from the various points of the car, and then this like heavier black, just kind of covering, it's not really a loom. That's where all this stuff for the headlights and the turn markers and all that kind of stuff all congregate into that. So I'll have to unwire all this stuff to be able to pull the wires through and get all that stuff out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and do all that and get this photographed and disconnected, and then get the bumper off, and then I think we should be most of the way there. Got all the bolts for the bumper loose, so hopefully now, again, you had two here and then two on the supports, so hopefully it'll pull straight off. I don't think it's real loud. Yeah, here comes the grill. All right, well, one package. There you go. Clean it up, see what it looks like. Got the bumper grill off. Everything looks pretty good under here. Some dirt, obviously. Got to clean all that stuff up. Bumper is okay. It's got some wiggles in it. Pretty good shot right there. These bumper stays here. These bars, the bolts go in from the bottom. It must be a real bear to get out. That'll be fun. My intention with this is to get this stuff re-chromed instead of going with the stainless steel stuff like I did with my Spitfire. The quality on those just wasn't that great, and though I know chroming is going to cost a bear of money, it's you know, this car is also like I had mentioned before, is kind of at the next level a little bit, so we'll probably lay out the cash as required. But one thing I wanted to show you, and I use this stuff quite extensively on the Spitfire rebuild, these little thread cleaners. They're both made, I know that's blurry, sorry, both make male and female, but these are the front bumper bolts that came off, and they're nasty, especially down here, you can see. So all it really does is clean the threads, and if you have a tap and die set, you can use the tap and die set, but the advantage of this purpose-built set here is the metal is a little bit softer, and it's not designed to cut the steel, it's designed just to chase the thread. So you'll clean it up without potentially re-threading it, which if you have a tap and die set and the threads are a little bit messed up and they're a little flat, where this may tend to straighten the threads back out, a tap and die set, either male or female, is going to tend to cut that off. But you essentially just run it in and out. I'll do that here real quick. And if you can see all the little dirt and nastiness that's collected inside this bolt is grooves cut in so that the dirt has the ability to kind of get in there and sit, and it doesn't stay on the threads, it lifts it up and out. So you can see all the gunk that thing pulled off these threads. So it dresses them pretty good. And like I said, unlike a tap and die set, the metal's not quite as hard, and you won't run the risk of cutting new threads when you don't want to. As always, I'll put a link in the description where I got this, and where do you think? Yep, Amazon. Removal of the headlamp is pretty straightforward. First, you have your beauty ring there. You got to get that off. Now, they do make a special tool for that, but just use kind of a big flathead screwdriver. And there's a little clip down here. I'll show you when I get it off. And essentially, you want to kind of peel it from the top a little bit. And then pop right there. You can hopefully see that little clip right there. I know the lighting's not the best. It should be a little bit better. So that's just the beauty ring there. And these are in pretty good shape. There's a couple dings in here, but definitely something that's probably worth saving. So the headlamp itself is in a bucket. And you have this silver ring here. Now on the other one, on the driver's side, I had an additional piece of black rubber that went over that, so I'll have to look into that and see why that's different. And that looked like it was just an extra seal. So these screws that you see here on the front, those will get that chrome ring off the front. And then this screw here, and there's probably another one over here somewhere, that'll adjust the headlight pitch, you know, so where it's pointing so you don't blind people. But then way in the back, that goes in the body, there's 3 Phillips head screws, and they hold the whole bucket in. And that's what I'm going to be taking off because I don't intend to dismantle this at this point. So it's just 3 Phillips head screws, and then there is a piece of rubber here that's probably corroded and nasty. It'll probably give me some problems getting out. Alright, so those 3 screws are loose. That's it. Just kind of pops off. One thing to note is the wires do come out the top, so when you go to put it in an orientation, I'm not sure if these 3 screws are aligned such of a way that you have no choice but to put the wires up at the top, but you might think that the wires go down the bottom to kind of hide them, but they don't. So that's it. That's real easy to get that headlight bucket off. One of the whole reasons I did this was to show you how the grill was, and I totally forgot. So you can see there's that little ding there, but all in all, it's in pretty good shape back here. This is where that bumper support bar comes through, so it's a little banged up in there, but this looks good on this side. Turning it over, got some paint overspray. Obviously I can take care of that probably with just a red scuff pad. I don't think it'll take much more than that. And there's definitely some roughness and everything down here. All in all, I think it's in pretty good shape. Definitely nothing that can't be repaired. This got flattened a little bit. I should be able to just gently bang that around. Hopefully bring that in. That got a little dinged. But yeah, so this is definitely at least a driver quality, if not a little bit better than that. Getting these couple fine spots repaired and definitely usable, that's for sure. These aren't cheap. But as I had pointed out before, the battery tray here, the rust kind of went all the way up, and I did get a little bit, you can just not really see it that well, but there is Bondo that's scooching into this shuttle vent here, or the scuttle vent here, so that'll have to be repaired. I'm going to try to get the rest of that Bondo off now. I got to be careful of the brake line here and see what's behind there completely and how bad it really looks. So looking at this, I have a feeling that instead of the battery itself causing the problem, so it may have contributed, I think that scuttle probably filled up with water at some point and just sat there instead of drained, and caused that rust through portion there at the top, and it just ran down. So that's going to be a relatively complicated repair in there, especially over to your right here where you see it's kind of bubbling a little bit. I couldn't get all the Bondo off. I'm not going to take a grinder to it now, but so that'll be fun. Another problem I'm having is I did want to get the engine out, and the issue is that there's no lift points that come with the engine. There should be a lift point that's bolted in here on the front engine plate, and there's a lift point that goes back here, and you can see this head stud's a little bit taller than the rest of them, and you had a bracket that bolted to this head stud and then down here on this exhaust manifold, and that's your rear lift point, and I don't have them that I can find anywhere. So obviously that's an issue. I did find a resource. Somebody's got a used front lift point, but that's kind of a bummer. So I'm just going to continue on doing some stuff. I do have a box of stuff right here that came with the car that I don't really have an inventory of. So I think I'm going to do that. And, all right, got this big box here. Let's see what we got. All right, this guy is for the air filters. So this comes off the vent tube from the cam or the valve cover. And then these two split into the air filters, which I have. So here's the original air filters, and these little tubes here, you just have a little hose that connects to these tubes. So this is, from what I understand, this stuff, especially this piece here, is kind of hard to come by. It is metal, original braided hose there. So obviously we'll be holding on to that stuff because that's worth some bucks, or at least it's hard to find. So that's cool. Got that. These are metal, by the way, so they're washable. It's not a replaceable air filter in there. Not a paper element, I should say. All right, got the original Stromberg 175 CD carburetors. They're still kind of attached to each other, so I'm going to loosen up the linkages here and take them apart so they don't get messed up, and then package them away. These will be undergoing essentially a full rebuild at some point. All right, the cooling fan, this is original. I believe you can still get these, but yeah, that's nice to have. Prop rod for the bonnet. Thought I didn't have one of them. Now this is a distributor pedestal, and this is another distributor pedestal, and looking at them, my assumption is that
this is the one that came out of the car. A couple things. This has the speedometer thing in there, which is kind of important. I don't know if that works. I'll stick a little. Here's the distributor drive gear, and also runs the oil pump, so it should fit in like that. All right, and it interacts with the speedometer gear, or the tachometer gear, I should say, and you can maybe see that spinning in there. So that's good that that works. Looks like it's in pretty good shape. Get this wrapped though because of the gears. I don't know why there's another one here. Who knows? Little bolt here. I'm see, take that out. Well, that pulls right out. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this and keep it separately because it is seems to probably be a pretty probably a piece that could be unfortunately lost or damaged. So I'm going to bag this up separate. And then this here, this clamp here is so you can adjust the timing of the distributor. So that's in good shape. All right, the other thing I have is the distributor itself. Now this is a Lucas distributor, but it's got an aftermarket electronic ignition in it, and I believe it's the Crane ignition. I have the ignition module. It's kind of bolted to the side of the fender well. So I assume that this works just fine. Don't have any reason to suspect that it doesn't. I did want to go to an electronic ignition on this one, so I don't know what kind of reputation these kits have or if it even works, but I'll hold on to it. Fuel pumps, got two fuel pumps in here. I assume that this guy right here is the original. I'm sure it says AC on here somewhere. And I rebuilt the AC pump on the Spitfire pretty much with no problem. I don't see any reason why I would have a problem rebuilding this one. This doesn't feel like it's really working. Anyway, we'll figure the fuel pumps out. All right, a Lucas coil, which is kind of interesting. It says Lucas anyway on it. So who knows if this works, but I'll hold on to it. Certainly hold on to it if it does. All right, a couple more big hunks in here. Brake caliper. Got rebuild kits for these already. So those are going to need some love and affection, I'm sure. All right, I don't know what these are for. Some sort of support, obviously. Maybe the radiator support, that might be what it is. Go across the top of the radiators. I'm not positive, so I won't mark them now. This guy here is the nose extension for the crankshaft pulley. This is what the fan will come in on this side, and the crank pulley bolts up here. It's just an extension to get underneath the front of the car. Kind of a weird design. And then this bolt here is the bolt that allows you to, you do have the capability of like crank starting these with a hand crank. So that guy fits in there like that. Engine breather tube. This is very convoluted, but essentially prevents the discharges the fumes from the crankcase to the street, but it prevents any oil from coming out. That's why it kind of goes up and then goes back down. Had a similar thing on the Spitfire. I blanked it off on the Spitfire because with the advent of the Mark IIs, they went to a different crankcase ventilation. This engine is prior to that, so it needs regular crankshaft ventilation. Some more linkage here. This looks like for a master cylinder though. That doesn't make any sense. I got the master cylinders on the car and they're intact. So that might be extra. And then this looks like the exhaust manifold and or intake manifold hardware, and then a bunch of other hardware that's in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of bag the rest of this stuff up, get it cleaned up, and catalog what I know is catalogable, clean this box out, put everything back in it, and be done. Mentioned I had a Crane electronic ignition, so this is Crane Cam's XR700. No idea. Never have had an electronic ignition like an aftermarket one, except on my 76 MG Midget when I was in high school, and that was a Piranha one, which never gave me any problems. But I'll have to look into this and how this works and what connects where and all that kind of stuff. This little plug is the module that connects into the distributor. That was obvious. So I'll bag this up, and it was just screwed into these two screws just on the side of the inside of the fender there on the driver's side. What I got here is the brake light switch actuator. On early cars, earlier TR4s, there was a little pressure switch that went on the brake line, but on the later cars, I don't know what serial number, but after mine, commission number, they put it up onto the master cylinder, which works a little bit better. I found this in the glove box. It doesn't work. I already had a ohm meter on it. It definitely doesn't work. And it's sealed pretty well, but I'm going to try to take it apart, get inside it. It's a Delco Remy. It's original. Take it apart, see if I can break it and make it worse. Fortunately, that metal's really soft. And it's breaking instead of bending. Alright, so there's the inside of it. Greasy. I think that might be why it doesn't work. Alright, a little spring. Nothing to that. Alright, and then the push rod. There's nothing to this thing. There's no reason that it would have broken outside of the fact that it was all gunked up with grease and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get it cleaned up and use some brake cleaner here and get that grease out of there. And it'll work. I'm sure after that it's just going to be a matter of whether or not I can get it resealed. Alright, everything is all cleaned up. And essentially, like I had mentioned, all it does really is come down and press there, and that little thing bottoms out in the top of the clips there. And that's it. That's your brake light. So we'll go ahead and we'll put it back together. Like I said, I'm not so sure that I'm going to be able to get this to actually stick in the body, but we'll see. Alright, well, that seemed to have worked. Operates relatively smoothly. Let's see if it works electrically. Alright, the little ohm meter will make a noise. Make the sound when it has zero resistance. Go ahead and connect it. Alright, so when the brakes are not pressed, it's a short. When you press the brakes, it's an open. So you break the circuit and the brake light's light. There you go. Now it works. Next thing I want to work on is getting the master cylinders out and the clutch slave. Now, from what the workshop manual says, these can only come out in pairs. They don't come out individually, or it comes out as a unit, I should say. I already put the brake switch in just to see how it lined it up. So I'll take that off. Get these connections make me a little nervous because they look pretty rusty. So we'll have to break the brake line, disconnect the brake lines, disconnect the clutch line there, and hopefully we won't shatter anything. Probably will not use these lines again just because they'll be sketchy. I replaced all my lines on the Spitfire, but I will hold on to them so that I know how they're supposed to bend when I get new ones. Alright, so we'll look inside these here. A lot of sludge in that one. Ooh, I don't know what that stuff is. Total crusties in there. No, oh well, it is what it is. I got it loose down here. It's slowly draining. Just old nasty brake fluid, I guess. That's what the inside of the clutch master cylinder looks like. All sorts of good stuff in there. Inside of the brake master cylinder, definitely some sludge. Not anywhere near as much. Man, I don't know. I don't know what that stuff is. So I couldn't get the pipes here broken away from the master cylinders without concern that I might break something. So I did disconnect down here and got the clutch slave out. And on the brake side, way over here, got that guy disconnected. That's the line that runs from the master cylinder and then distributes through the car. I'll show you the clutch slave. So here's the clutch slave cylinder. It is a Girling, so it's original. You can see the Girling mark right there. That's what this push rod was for. Finally figured that out. Didn't take me too long. Obviously this hose is going to need to be replaced. I assume the inside of this is probably not too pretty based on what the slave cylinder looked like. But I think we're going to try to get some PB blaster on this stuff, get these loosened up a little bit, or at least soaking. Continue to move on with removing the whole assembly here. I'm just going to take the whole thing out and hopefully won't have any problems with it. So this whole unit here, including the pedal box down below, I believe. I'll have to check out how that all works. All right, up inside the driver's footwell here, the clutch pedal and the brake pedal assembly here. It's all bolts from this side, it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen all these up and see if I can't get this thing out of here. And brake pedals will drop down into here, I assume, and then the master cylinders will lift up. Got the assembly out here. Definitely not the most intuitive of things. So you have 4 set screws. So this fits obviously in the passenger compartment like this, right, with the pedals hanging down. You got a set screw up here, 2 more here, and then one that attaches to the front of the firewall like that. And then on the top, you've got these studs that get to the nuts from the top, from inside the engine compartment. So a little weird, but you know, this one seems to rebound okay. This one doesn't have a return spring. That stuff is pretty stiff in there. So there's bushings in here that I can clean up and all that. Obviously, you can get new springs. So that'll be a dirty job to clean that up. And then you've got the actual master cylinder box right here. So the bolts come from the back. So I'll be able to unbolt that and then hopefully be able to get the pipes off at that point. So I'm going to try to do that. I've got the slave cylinder and the vise over here soaking some PB blaster in the hose so I can get the hose out. The inside of the slave cylinder don't look so hot. So we're going to go ahead and take this apart and see if we can get it disassembled and then call it. All right, well, not going to get the motor out this video, unfortunately. I got a lead on the front pull point. The rear one, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do there, but based on recommendations on my favorite forum, you don't want to use that rear one. But anyway, we'll see what happens in the future. Continuing the slow tear down. Thanks a lot for watching. Cheers.